Welcome to the last lecture of the seminar tonight. At 21 opus numbers or publications of his compositions, the distance between the two sonatas is the longest separations among his 32 piano sonatas. And strangely, the Appassionata was dedicated to Franz von Brunswick, and the Op.78 was dedicated to Therese von Brunswick. And yes, Franz and Therese were brother and sisters. I will discuss the Appassionata later in April next year, but briefly I'm going to give a description here. It is a ferocious storm full of rage and despair. I see Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the Appassionata, screaming the unspeakable despair. But in the Sonata Opus 78, we find a completely different atmosphere. The sky is pristine clear, and it feels like an early springtime. Flowers shooting from the ground are racing to bloom. No storm nor thunder, only a tingle of nostalgic sorrow from the winter past. What was happening? A long absence from writing a piano sonata at the span of his Opus 57 to his 78, and the two very contrasting sonatas were dedicated to the brother and sisters of the Brunswicks. There was an intriguing love story behind this, but there was also a story of a noble soul. First, let's take a look at the dedicatee of this sonata, the elder sisters of the Brunswick, Therese. I discovered that Therese was the founder of nursery or preschool in Hungary. Therese must be a gentle soul because she cared for the disadvantaged children, like from poor families, whose parents both must work during the day. This explains the tenderness and the noble quality of this sonata dedicated to her. Therese must have a sympathy for Beethoven, whose childhood was full of hardships and abuse. Perhaps the 5 years older composers found a motherly figure in Therese he lacked of in his childhood. I could relate to the opening of this sonata. A very lofty, solemn atmosphere, like an ode, a feeling of adoration and respect. Some scholars suggested Therese was Beethoven's immortal beloved, but some other scholars suggested differently. Beethoven's immortal beloved was Therese's younger sister, Josephine. Therese was an unselfish soul. She knew her sister Josephine had a feeling for the composers and vice versa. In her letter, she wrote how happy her sister and Beethoven would be if they were united in marriage. However, it was such a cruel fate that the Brunswick was from the nobility, while Beethoven was a mere commoner. Marriage was an impossibility. The Appassionata dedicated to Josephine brothers Franz expressed well this cruel fate. But then, I believe, few years later, Beethoven had come to accept his destiny. And I believe the sonata, Opus 78, was the outcome. But why the sonata was dedicated to Therese? Despite the oppositions from her family, Therese showed support for Beethoven, as shown in her letter wishing that Josephine would have married him. I strongly believe that Beethoven truly treasures the person who could understand and accept him. Based on my analysis, I would interpret this sonata not as an expression of a passionate love, but as a solemn, revered companionships and appreciations gestures from Beethoven of being understood and accepted by Therese. Unselfish soul must have tamed the raging inferno of the Frankenstein in his Appassionata. The sense of security Therese had provided Beethoven with had made him to be so free. In the first movement, more rhapsodic in nature, less formal. The second movement is so childlike, playful, highly spirited, and at times silly, but of course the silliness of a genius. I believe the nickname Therese for this sonata deserves the same celebrity status as that of the Waldstein.